light of the passing of a great hero, the father of the nation, former South African President Nelson Mandela, a global report on the Mandela Twitter mentions was compiled. Lebaka from ZA Social Media joins us now for more. But first, if Mandela was on social media, what would his profile look like? Well, let's take a look at this. What a phenomenal video there. And, in studio, we're joined by Lebaka from ZA Social Media, joining us for more. Keke, looking at that video, you have some insights as to who compiled it, a South African company, I believe.
Yeah, quite a great video just to show how Madiba would be using social media if it was on during those years.
Who compiled it?
It was, I think, done by a local company in South Africa. I just can't remember which exact company did it, but it's a great thing. Yeah.
But coming back to the passing away of Nelson Mandela globally, the Mandela hashtag began trending globally, and I guess from a South African perspective as well, everybody wanted to get in on it. Any numbers as to how many tweets were sent out using that hashtag?
Yeah, the morning after President Zuma announced the passing away of former President Nelson Mandela, I mean, we went about doing a report to just see, what mentions were out there and what people were saying. And just looking from about 8 p.m. On the 5th to about 8 a.m. the morning, there were about 6.5 million global mentions of the word Mandela, right? And that includes all the other hashtags like RIP Mandela and all those other ones. So there are about 6.5 million, and we wanted to just understand where are these coming from and how does South African feature, right, in all those tweets that are going out there. And the country that had the most active users around those mentions was the United States, and the celebrity that was retweeted the most around this was Lady Gaga. Right? And some of the other things that we looked at, we wanted to see how many of these mentions are actually coming from South Africa, but only 4% of those mentions were actually coming from South Africa. So all the other mentions were global mentions, and we tracked it from about the 5th and the 6th and going into this weekend to see how the mentions would actually be sustained on social media. And we saw that the 5th and the 6th had the most mentions, the 5th having about 4.4 million mentions, the 6th having 4.4 million mentions, and after that, it started going down. The 7th had 800,000 mentions, the 8th had 500,000 mentions, the 9th had 400,000 mentions, and it went up a bit on the 10th, which was the memorial. That's when it went up to about 896 mentions. But another thing to look at there, I mean, we also looked at how many mentions, for instance, President Obama got on the day. And he also got about 800,000 mentions on that day. So it has been going down. People are not tweeting so much about...
Keke, 800,000 people mentioned on the day of the memorial. This is many days after.
Yeah.
I think that's quite staggering if you consider in a global context.
Yeah.
Try and put 800,000 people into a stadium.
Yeah, and we're really watching it and hoping that it will actually go up, and looking at Sunday at the actual funeral, and that's quite interesting there. And another thing that we looked at is how do these mentions compare with other world events and maybe other passings of other famous people and all of that. And we saw that with Nelson Mandela, the word Mandela had about 6.5 million mentions from 12 hours from the time when President Zuma actually announced it. And we actually went and looked at Paul Walker, who also passed away a short while after that, and he got about 6.3 million mentions, so almost the same number as the mentions that the word Mandela got on Twitter. But what we see normally on social media is, depending on how tragic the death is or what actually happened, that would also influence the number of mentions that would get. And just looking back a bit, looking at Whitney Houston, a number of mentions she got when she passed away, and that was about 3.5 million mentions that she got over a 12-hour period. So it's just giving it perspective and seeing how those tweets actually did.
Why was Lady Gaga so heavily retweeted? Did she say something clever?
She basically tweeted about it and sending her message out through there. But because of the number of followers that she has.
No, but what did she say? Did she say anything clever, or was it just because of her followers?
Because of her followers mainly. That's why that's why she got so many. I mean, when we looked at some of the other influencers that also got a lot of mentions around that, it's also mainly because of the following that they got.
You said South Africa's got did 4%. Now, we only have 0.7% of people on Earth. So if we did 4% of all the tweets, we must be punching above our weight in the Twitter sphere.
Yeah, no, we're doing quite well with South Africa having over 5 million active users, monthly active users on Twitter. I mean, we're actually doing quite well. I mean, Twitter is actually becoming as popular as Facebook is nowadays, and everyone's using it. And
Keke, thank you.